So welcome, our beloved and brilliant colleague, Vinod. We so appreciate your consistent leadership and solidarity in all that you're doing for so many. And as always, at Setsi and in this collaboration of Future of Good today, we begin by giving thanks to our creator, by giving thanks to the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We give thanks to all our ancestors, all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We give thanks to all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So Vinod, can you please introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers and share a bit about your remarkable work?
Yeah, thank you so much, Victor. Always a pleasure to be in conversation with you and to engage the wonderful folks at Setsi. My name is Vinod Rajasekaran, and I live and work in unceded, unsurrendered, and occupied Algonquin and Anishinaabe territory in what is colonially known as Ottawa, Ontario. And I'm a first-generation immigrant here. My parents moved to Canada when I was about 9 years old from India, and my kids were born here. They are multilingual, biracial, multicultural. And it's really important for me to acknowledge my responsibilities, as an immigrant, as a settler to this land that is unceded and occupied territory, and also reflect on my responsibilities for the future. So, my role at Future of Good is CEO and editor-in-chief, and Future of Good is a very unique and an ambitious media and learning organization that covers the transformations shaping the social purpose world. And there are many transformations that are shaping the social purpose world over the next decade. And we have about 8 journalists across the country that deeply report on these transformations, that follow them very closely, and they range from reconciliation, decolonization, to artificial intelligence, to volunteerism and the nonprofit workforce, to social finance and impact investing, and most recently we've been very fortunate to invite Jahanzeb Hussain, who's our newest journalist, who covers the big transformations that are happening in the world of humanitarian aid, global development, sustainable development goals, et cetera, et cetera. So fascinating space that we are seeing a ton of innovation, a ton of transformation in, that we're going to be covering more regularly and consistently. So, and in addition to our journalism, the other side of the work that we do is learning experiences and data and research. So we host some conferences and webinars, some pretty transformational topics that we also cover. So very shortly, we are anticipating and very excited about our 2024 Social Finance Forum that our friends at Mars have been hosting for a number of years, and that we had taken over and sort of rebuilt it from the ground up. Still a ways to go, but I think we're on a very, very exciting path now. It's a pan-Canadian experience, not just a central Canadian experience like it was for some time, but continue to sort of emphasize and focus on building viewpoint diversity across the social purpose world, and having both relevant as well as uncomfortable and tough conversations about the next decade of social finance. And then, we also do some really breakthrough stuff, like, we hosted Canada's first ever Changemaker Wellbeing Summit in February. And well-being is very much a taboo topic in workplaces across the social purpose world. And, there's so many parts of this that we unpacked and discussed at the summit itself, looked at, the implications to health and well-being of working in financial precarity for prolonged periods of time. Looked at climate anxiety and eco-anxiety, looked at intergenerational trauma, microviolence, microaggressions, anxiety and mental health, of course, and it was just an absolutely phenomenal conversation. We had 600 people, coast to coast to coast, join this, and it really set the bar high for us. So we're looking ahead at 2025 and like, whoa, you know. But that's a signal for us that this is a conversation and a discussion that was long overdue, and we're happy to step in and feel very grateful to be able to steward and host a conversation on uncomfortable topics like this. So the third part of the work that we do is as data and research. So very quickly, this is an emerging area of work for us, and this includes one of the things we realized, that many of you realized as well, is that there is no high quality data to actually enable the systemic change that we want to see. And so we are going to be doing a lot of data analysis, indexes, rankings, etc. We're going to be releasing our very first rankings this fall, which will be called Top 50 Equitable Funders. And so we've developed a rigorous methodology with an equity research organization called Quake Lab, and they've been really terrific and contribute the research capacity that the Future of Good doesn't have at the moment. And we're taking the 500 largest grant makers by asset size and assessing how well they center equity and inclusion in their grant making. And so and then we're going to celebrate the best 50, and give the others a little nudge. And so we're going to be doing this annually for the next decade at least, because that's how long it takes to really tip the scales and create the kind of systemic change we want to see.
I can't applaud you and your team enough. When you talk about setting the bar high, your team does a tremendous job. Your leadership has been remarkable. The work of Anouk and Gabe and Dwayne and Charlene and Diane. I'm sure I'm missing folks, but once again, I just think that there's some serious work being done around knowledge products being developed, convenings, gatherings, thought leadership and practitioners coming together, and true disruption innovation. So once again, I applaud you. And it's a perfect segue to the next question. In terms of social innovation and justice in complex systems, how are you feeling right now? So, because I know we have an opportunity to get to trends and tensions, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on this innovation, justice, and complex systems.
Yeah, it's probably one of the most profound dynamics that the social purpose world has been experiencing for some time, and we'll have to really, really figure out how to navigate this together. And the dynamics between innovation and justice have profound effects for societal change. And one of the big questions that I've been examining and reflecting on is what happens when innovation outpaces justice. And we know history, has all kinds of examples of when innovation outpaces justice, and there's all kinds of cascading effects. For people, families, communities, intergenerational cascading effects. There's all kinds of negative externalities for biodiversity and planet and so on. But it's really important to understand, how can we apply the principles of innovation? Because the work that we do requires innovation discipline. So how can we apply the principles of innovation and the principles of justice in parallel, in the development of programs and services, in the development of new governance models, all of this type of stuff, right? And so this is a central question for the social purpose world over the next 5 to 10 years. And because we're at a time where we have exhausted the low-hanging fruit. Like there is no more low-hanging fruit. It's gone. It's all gone. And so now the excruciatingly hard work begins. And the question is are we up for it? Because innovation, requires, a constant flow of new ideas. It's all about, being agile, learning fast. It's about experimentation. It's about rigor. It's about, doing high quality research and development and all of that. And justice is about relationships. It's about equity. so, rights. It's about repair, healing, reparations, all of this type of stuff and more. So often what you would find is in complex systems, whether you're talking elder care or food security, or pick your system, or within even in complex institutions, there is a dynamic, a relational dynamic between innovation and justice. And so the question for me is how do you characterize the relationship between innovation and justice within your own organization? Because there's all kinds of change makers out there, but there's two change makers that often get mixed up. And I think I've mentioned this in the past in one of our reportings, and that's justice seekers and future builders. And they sound very similar, but there's a key difference in that justice seekers are really pursuing better equality in the same system. And it's more young people on boards, or more brown people need beds, or whatever it might be. Whereas future builders are coming up with new models and new approaches that make the old models obsolete. And so they don't just want more young people on boards. They want a completely new set of Roberts rules. And you need both. You need both justice seekers and future builders to work together. And one of the things that I've noticed is that there is an over-dialing on one and the under-dialing in another, and that creates blind spots. And so if we want to get to a place where we want to have an inspiring future for our planet and our kids, we have to crack the nut on how we apply innovation and justice in parallel.
Very helpful. So when I'm conceptualizing or just like framing out the justice seekers versus the future builders, in terms of them working in concerts or working together, collaborating and building, and we look at that pretty pervasive challenge of innovation outpacing justice in some instances, and what happens in terms of those cascading effects. What are some of the actual insights that you've gleaned from the leaders that you're navigating? Because obviously you're navigating both groups simultaneously in various contexts, ecosystems. Like, what does that feel and look like?
Yeah, it's I'll be honest. A lot of leaders across the social purpose world are feeling incredibly tense right now, and there's a lot of blind spots that has been revealed because of the type of insularity that that's come about. And what I mean by that is that the social purpose world in some ways is found itself in a morality trap, and what that means is that there are certain groups that prefer to be insular, and the danger with that is that they use the insularity to create guilt, and they use the insularity to alienate and to vilify other groups, and it's very interesting, Victor, because this is a sector that is generally for all kinds of inclusion, and we talk about more brown people, and we need more Black people, and more queer folks, and Indigenous folks, and women, and young people, and all that sort of stuff. We're open to including all kinds of groups, except for one group, and that's people who don't believe in the same things we believe in. And this is the sort of the hypocrisy of inclusion that many of us are living through, many leaders are living through and experiencing. And so there's a lot of times, folks use this to alienate certain groups, and you could, it could be a range of kinds of people. You might alienate people who are in urban centers. You could use this to alienate people who are in the private sector. You could use this to alienate, people who are white men. Like all kinds of types of things, right? And so it's created a very reductionist view of the world, and perhaps a particularly romanticized view of the past. And this is it's quite dangerous when you look ahead to sort of the next decade, and even how do we become more trustworthy as social purpose organizations, because public trust in NGOs is still hovering around 50%. And what does it mean to become more trustworthy? What are the actions that we might take together? And this type of sensibility is not helpful, and so it's very unfortunate that we're in this place where a lot of leaders feel cornered and feel like they have to pander to extreme left ideologies, and they have to pander to people who think in a certain way, and so that's the sort of the place that we're in, and this internal sort of like polarization is only reinforces this and the sort of the pandering only reinforces this morality trap that we find ourselves in. So I don't have an easy answer, but this is a big thing that I'm observing, and I think that we are living in an extraordinary time in which we are facing both existential crises but also exponential opportunities, right? And the status quo is not an option in any context. But the next decade can be massively transformational for us to realize our biggest, wildest dreams. And my view is that you can only realize your biggest, wildest dreams is if you genuinely, authentically build bridges and listen to understand, listen to discern, not listen to react, and center viewpoint diversity in all that we do, right? And so I think this is essential, and we need to build this back up. It's something that we've sort of gotten lost along the way, and I'd love to see the sector get to a place where it can actually build bridges again.
That's beautiful. I couldn't agree more. Far too many folks, especially leaders, are listening to react. I remember Marcus Aurelius quotes around a calm mind is a strong mind. And I feel we're not in that place of calmness or stillness in terms of our minds because there's so many distractions and this depolarization. So whenever a value or a conviction or a thought is challenged or questioned in any way, shape, or form, we go right into fight or flights, which is very problematic if we need consensus and dialogue and deliberation to be able to advance anything. So I feel that model of victims and villains, shame and blame, sometimes is so problematic, especially in terms of creation or creativity, innovation, imagination. It limits us to our small little echo chambers, folks that agree. One of your colleagues, Anouk, said something so fast. She said, the call to action I have, and this is like maybe a few months ago, she said, I hope that people just practice a simple activity, going out and having a coffee with someone they disagree with. And I think there's a huge distinction between disagreeing with someone and being disagreeable. And it's so easy to be disagreeable as opposed to disagreeing and seeing what you have in common. Because usually when you disagree with someone so strongly, I bet you have more in common with them than you don't. So once again, I just really appreciate your candor and the introspection around those thoughts. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. So, and just to quickly add to that, you mentioned creativity, and this is the juncture where we're at, Victor. We can look ahead to the next decade and have creativity driven progress, or we can look ahead to the next decade and have guilt driven progress. And guilt driven progress is what's by and large happening now, and it has a dangerous end. And that just means less dialogue, more insularity, more alienation and vilifying. This does not, this actually, creates an intergenerational transmission of guilt. And I would like for us to get to a place where we are fueled by creativity-driven progress, and not just guilt-driven progress.
Well, guilt-driven progress is a dead end. It's not sustainable. We saw that in the States with the ESG pushback, the DEI pushback, and so on and so forth. The only way that we can advance in a sustainable way is when it is from a place of creativity. So once again, I couldn't agree more. And it's a perfect segue. So in terms of some trends, we'll cap it around 3. So I know there's so much happening in the world. In terms of trends and tensions right now in the ecosystem, social purpose, social innovation, social impact, I'd love to hear some of your thoughts and provocations.
Yeah. As you said, there's a ton happening. This is really an extraordinary decade of both massive change and rapid growth across the social purpose world. And you can see that there's some extraordinary ingenuity coast to coast to coast. We see it every day in all of our journalism. We see it in all the conferences and summits that we host. But there's 3 that I'd like to highlight in particular. The first is AI, or artificial intelligence. And we are in a pivotal moment when it comes to artificial intelligence and AI tools. And there's the sort of the obvious ones that folks know about: Midjourney, ChatGPT, etc. But there's like 25,000 at least, today, and that's growing exponentially. And there's we took about 6 months in our technology reporter, Charlene Gandhi, did a deep dive into how AI tools are being used by social purpose organizations across the country. And it was extraordinary. Folks are already using it for all kinds of things, from communications to grant writing to fundraising to community engagement, research, HR, accounting, a whole range of things. And they use it for intelligence gathering. They use it to create efficiencies in their work, and it's fascinating to see how people are using it. And there's a number of hundreds of use cases across the country. And so I think we're in this really pivotal moment. Yes, there is some anxiety around AI tools, and that I think will continue to be with us for at least the next few years. Because we're at a time where 4 in 5 employers don't have AI guidelines, and so, but that's going to change very quickly. But the really interesting opportunity space here is, I actually believe the social purpose world, yes, of course, we can upskill in AI, and we should be upskilling at AI in a way rapider pace. But I think, going back to our point about innovation and justice, how do you, apply innovation and justice in parallel to the development of AI, right? And this is where I think social purpose organizations have an extraordinary, important role to play. And if you look at the sort of the birth of the internet, the birth of social media, these are all step, changes in our societies. And AI is a very similar, if not far greater, step change in our society. So this isn't about sort of the consumption of AI tools, but this is about the consumption, as well as how might we shape these tools that is shaping society. So I think the social purpose world has an extraordinary role to play. It's too bad because the sector has no AI strategy. Well, the sector doesn't have many strategies, but that's a different story. I really wish we had a talent strategy, an AI strategy, a data strategy, an innovation strategy, a retirement strategy, a climate strategy, and etc. But that's a separate. We should do a separate recording on that. But we really need an AI strategy, and not just sort of how we could use AI, but how we could shape AI. So that's one. The second is social finance. And we're, again, at an extraordinary time in the history of social finance in Canada. First time ever, the government of Canada has made its biggest contribution yet to the social finance ecosystem. And that is going to double and triple as all these, kind of matching elements come to play. But it's an extraordinary time. The capital is being rolled out from investment managers to intermediaries to social purpose organizations. And it's going to happen over the next sort of few years. But the opportunity space around social finance, and there's a range of social finance tools, from community bonds to outcomes financing to equity crowdfunding and so on. The big question now is, what if social finance could fund your biggest dreams? What if? Right? So sit with that for a minute. And because I think that social finance could unlock all kinds of possibilities for social purpose organizations. And now is the time to really understand and become more aware of the variety of social finance tools out there, and the combinations of social finance tools that we could bring to bear to update and modernize and really become far more sustainable in our business models. So that's number two. And the last thing I'll sort of mention as an important trend is well-being. And we just released a special report on well-being, workplace well-being in the social purpose world that's been widely read. And we hosted Canada's first Changemaker Wellbeing Summit. That was, about 600 people joined for some really, really intense discussions and conversations. And this is an area that's of intense importance for us. We have heard from the social purpose world, and we have learned that it's of intense importance for leaders and teams and boards across the country. And so the question for me here is, what if well-being guides every decision you make? So think about that, right? Over the next year or two, what if well-being guides every decision you make? Because we're at a point now where, as much as the social purpose world is doing some extraordinary things, most managers and teams and leaders are facing chronic stress, are facing anxiety, and including the early onset of chronic illness. And so this is not healthy. There is enormous talent flight from the social purpose world into other sectors, because employers are not paying attention to well-being in their workplace. And a lot of it it's not that they don't want to. It's it's not something that they're used to doing. And so only now are we finally, realizing the emotional labor, the emotional cost, and the mental burden that workers feel and experience when they're working so passionately on causes they care about. And so we've never been able to sort of actually put our fingers on this. And we still don't have a full, complete picture, which is why, at Future of Good, we're at the early stages of developing what I think is Canada's first ever Changemaker Wellbeing Index. And so this is going to be an annual research project that we're aiming to launch in 2025 that will give us a comprehensive view of the health and well-being of people working in social purpose organizations. And so hopefully, leaders and teams and boards could use this to be better informed on a range of well-being metrics, from kind of how much sleep do people get to how much do they have access to mental health supports through work, all kinds of things, and make more informed decisions so they can center well-being in their workplace. So those are sort of, there's many trends, but those are three things that I would highlight. I've talked about sort of a couple of tensions. One is the morality trap, and the other thing that I spoke about was trust. There's a third thing that I want to kind of quickly mention, and that is there is a growing sense of awareness of the question: what if our work is harming future generations? And think about that for a second, right? there is no way right now to assess and cost out the intergenerational effects of programs, services, community engagement, all this work that we do. And our conditioning is that the negative externalities happens outside the sector. Other sectors create and generate negative externalities, and usually, the rhetoric is that, and the conditioning is that the business world, and yes, the business world has generated a lot of negative externalities over the last many decades. But what if your work, what if your programs, your services, what if your work is potentially harming future generations? And this is something that we need to really understand. There's a slow but global movement building around intergenerational justice. And Portugal about a year ago launched their first intergenerational justice index, which is fascinating. So it looks at assesses the intergenerational effects of social programs and social policies on future generations. Only a handful of countries around the world have an intergenerational justice index. Canada isn't one of them. And so in the absence of something like this, there's an onus, I believe now, and a responsibility of civil society and civil society organizations to put energy into understanding what could be the intergenerational effects of the work that we do, because we're living at a time where we bear the responsibility of and of the intergenerational consequences of our actions.
I really appreciate the way you frame that and the deep introspection behind it, because I don't think folks are asking themselves that question in terms of, like, there's obviously a sentiment of do no harm, but there isn't an index, a framework, a strategy, even a conversation. So I really appreciate you putting that into ethers. And it's a perfect segue. One of my favorite proverbs of all time is from Mali, from Africa. And it's the only thing that's more important than your children is your children's children. So in terms of just future thinking and future proofing, as you know, I'm a super fan of Future of Good's work, your journalism, your data research, your reports, your knowledge products, your summits, your gatherings. So, and you're enabling social purpose teams from across Canada, innovators, thought leaders, practitioners. How do you feel about the future of Future of Good?
That's a profound question, Victor. I feel energized. And I feel energized about the future of Good. And it's not going to be an easy journey. It never was. If it was an easy journey, this would have happened, 10, 15, 25, 30 years ago. It's not an easy journey. And, our team, which is 17, 18, folks now, which is extraordinary, they wake up every morning and they're hugely energized by our mission. And we are here to enable a smarter social purpose world. And we do that through journalism, we do that through our learning events, and we do that through this new emerging kind of space of data and research. And that's just the start. There's so many exciting things that we're going to embark on over the next 2, 3, 5, 7 years. And I think the questions for me is, and that I put out there for the social purpose world is, are we up for it? Are we up for the next decade of transformations? I don't mean, create like small little changes, which are important, but I mean foundational transformations, right? How are we going to embed and incorporate and embrace and shape AI? How are we going to embed and incorporate well-being? How are we going to fundamentally rethink the business model of social change so that we're not in this, fragile state all the time, right? So these are very fundamental questions, and it's going to require a lot of courage and audacity from all kinds of incredible folks to steward this. And I feel very excited about it. and my colleague Anouk is also very excited about it. And so I think there's the question for me is who's up for joining us?
I put my hand up. You know I'm walking with you, fam. Yeah. So once again, a perfect segue as always. You're a masterful facilitator and orator. Do you have any closing thoughts or calls to action for our listeners and our viewers?
My call to action would be that the moment in time that we are in, as extraordinary as it is in the history of social change, to be alive and working in this moment, we also have an enormous responsibility. And we have an enormous responsibility to shift a specific mindset that many of us carry. And we often ask, what is questions? What is this? What is that? I would love for us to ask at least 3 what if questions in our work every day. Let's go from what is to what if, and ask at least 3 what if questions every day. And then let's make our imaginations come alive through this. Like that's what the next decade requires of us. It doesn't require us to tinker at the edges and hold on to what's left and be fragile all the time. It requires us to open up our hearts, our minds, our wills, and really usher in a very inspiring decade of social change. And that requires us to ask at least 3 what if questions every day.
Ashe, ashe, ashe. Thank you so much for your incredible leadership, tenacity, authenticity, and great vision for the future of this work on our ecosystem. You're a precious gift to us, my brother. And once again, I just really appreciate all that you do for so many. You walk with incredible integrity, and I consider you a valued colleague, friend, brother, ally. So once again, I applaud you in all the work that you're doing. And as always, at Setsi, we close these conversations, especially in remarkable ones where we get to partner with Future of Good, by just giving thanks to the original stewards, the various lands we're on, that we all owe so much to. We give thanks to all our ancestors, all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We give thanks to all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. Thank you, Vinod. I appreciate you, my friend.
Yeah, thank you so much, Victor. Absolute pleasure as always. And we could record for another 3 or 4 hours. But we should do this regularly. I really enjoyed our exchange, and really appreciate the time and the energy and the thoughtfulness in your questions.
Sure. Thank you.